Hanna Parker satt alone in her modest living room as dusk crept over the horizon. The late afternoon light filtered softly through lace curtains, scattering fragile patterns of gold and shadow on the faded floral rug. In her lap lay an old, well-worn photo album whose brittle pages still held the memories of a happier time. Her trembling fingers paused over a particular photograph, a small, cherished image of a little girl with bright hazel eyes and sunlit curls. The name beneath that photo was Emma, and though it had been years since she last heard those sweet giggles echoing through her home, the ache of loss still burned fiercely within her. It was a day seared into Hannah's memory, a perfect summer afternoon at the beach when laughter mingled with the salty tang of the sea air. Emma, only 3 years old, had been chasing the rolling tide with boundless joy, her tiny footprints momentarily marking the wet sand. In a heartbeat, however, that joyous scene had shattered. One moment, Emma was there, and in the next, she had vanished without a trace. The beach had erupted into chaos as desperate voices called out her name, and Hannah had sprinted along the shoreline, heart pounding, eyes wild with terror. Despite the frantic search by strangers and officials alike, no sign of her daughter had ever been found. The authorities had gently suggested that perhaps the tide had swallowed Emma whole. But no rational explanation could ever soothe a mother's heart. Every fiber of Hannah's being rebelled against accepting that fate. Each night, as the world grew quiet, she would sit by the window and whisper, "Emma, if you're out there, please come home. I will never stop loving you." The wind seemed to carry her words far beyond the confines of her sorrow, though they always returned unanswered. Years passed in a haze of muted days and restless nights. Friends offered condolences and pitying smiles. Strangers averted their eyes, unwilling to face the raw vulnerability of a heart forever in mourning. Je trug se loneliness and despair, a stupborn ember of hope refuse to die. Deep down, Hannah believed that somewhere, somehow, her daughter might still be alive. That belief became her lifeline, a bittersweet conviction that sustained her through endless seasons of waiting and watching the sea. In the silence of her solitary vigil, every crashing wave and rustling breeze reminded her of that fateful day and the promise she made to herself, never to give up. With every sunrise, her determination was renewed, and with every sunset, the hope that Emma might one day return burned a little brighter. Though her heart ached with a longing that time could not heal, Hannah clung to the dream of reunion as though it were the very air she breathed. 2 years after that fateful day at the beach, Hannah's world had grown unbearably quiet. The empty spaces in her home echoed with memories of laughter now silenced by loss. Determined to fill the void in her heart, yet never daring to believe she could ever replace Emma, Hannah found herself standing before the weathered gates of Willow Creek Orphanage. The building itself, modest yet filled with the bittersweet energy of hopeful children, beckoned her in a way she could not resist. Inside the orphanage, the air was alive with the sound of small voices and the scurry of busy feet. In one sunlit corner of the courtyard, Hannah's eyes fell upon a solitary boy sitting quietly on a worn bench. He was slight and timid, his dark hair disheveled and his oversized clothes hinting at a life of constant change. As their eyes met, something unspoken passed between them, a shared understanding of longing and loss. "Are you here for someone?" the boy asked softly, his voice carrying a trace of cautious hope. Hannah knelt beside him, her heart stirring at the sound of his gentle inquiry. "Maybe I am. What's your name, sweetheart?" "Ethan," he replied, barely above a whisper, as if the mere sound of his name was both fragile and precious. In that moment, a fissure cracked open within Hannah, a mix of empathy and a deep-seated need to love once again. Although no earthly being could ever replace Emma, the quiet sincerity in Ethan's eyes compelled her to offer him something he might have never experienced, a chance to belong. "Ethan, would you like me to come back tomorrow?" she asked, voice soft yet determined. His small hand reached out and clasped hers, a silent promise that transcended the boundaries of blood and time. Days turned into weeks as Hannah returned day after day to the orphanage. With each visit, she read stories to the children, shared meals, and built a gentle routine that slowly began to mend her battered spirit. Ethan, in particular, grew attached to her, a delicate flower emerging amidst a barren landscape of abandonment. Though he did not call her mom immediately, every smile, every shared secret, every tear shed in the quiet hours of the night affirmed a deepening bond between them. Ethan became a living reminder that love could grow in unexpected places. His presence filled the silent void left by Emma's disappearance, not by replacing her, but by offering a new kind of hope, a hope that love could heal and that hearts, though scarred, were capable of opening up once more. And while Hannah's search for Emma continued in the quiet recesses of her soul, She began to realize that sometimes, life gifts us with the very strength to carry on, even in the face of our deepest losses. Years had passed since Ethan first wandered into Hannah's life, and the once timid boy had blossomed into a thoughtful, kind-hearted young man. At 26, Ethan carried himself with a quiet confidence and an inner warmth that made everyone around him feel at ease. For Hannah, who had spent so many years mourning a daughter and nurturing the love for a child who had saved her from despair, the joy of watching Ethan mature was a bittersweet comfort, a gentle reminder that life could continue even after profound loss. One cool autumn evening, while Hannah was in the kitchen preparing a pot of chamomile tea to soothe the lingering chill in her bones, her phone rang. The soft chime startled her, and she quickly wiped her hands on a faded kitchen towel before answering with a bright, hopeful smile. The familiar sound of Ethan's voice on the other end filled her with warmth, though tonight his tone carried an excitement that was both unfamiliar and electric. "Mom, I have something wonderful to tell you," Ethan began, his voice dancing with barely contained enthusiasm. "I'm getting married." For a brief moment, the room fell silent as Hannah allowed the news to sink in.
The words echoed like a joyful promise in her heart. "Getting married?"
"Oh, sweetheart, that's marvelous news," she exclaimed, her voice trembling with happiness and a tinge of anxiety. Marriage had always been a milestone that brought with it a mix of hope, change, and uncertainty. "Her name is Naomi," Ethan continued after a pause, as if the name itself carried a world of meaning yet to be explained. "I've been with her for over a year now. You haven't seen any photos, have you?" His question, light and teasing, was met with a fleeting silence on Hannah's end.
Hannah hesitated.
The very thought of a woman unknown to her conjured both curiosity and a subtle dread she could not quite place. "No, you haven't shown me a single picture of her," she gently prodded, trying to mask the undercurrent of concern that stirred within her. Ethan's laughter, warm and reassuring, filled the gap. "I promise, Mom, once you meet her, you'll understand why I fell in love with her.
Naomi is extraordinary. Kind, smart, and full of life.
I know you'll love her just as much as I do." Yet even as Ethan painted a picture of Naomi in words, a portrait of grace and tenderness, a small nagging sensation tugged at Hannah's heart. There was something about the mystery of a woman who had remained unseen by the one person who had known her best. Still, she chose to trust her son's judgment, clinging to the hope that this new chapter in his life would bring nothing but happiness. Over the next few days, Hannah found herself oscillating between joy for Ethan's new beginning and a quiet, persistent worry. In her dreams, she saw flashes of a face she could not recall, a face that haunted the margins of her memories. But she pushed the visions away, telling herself that love had the power to heal even the deepest wounds. The upcoming wedding, with all its promises and uncertainties, seemed like a beacon of light emerging from years of relentless darkness. And so, with cautious optimism, Hannah began preparing herself to welcome Naomi into their ever-evolving family, unaware that this union would unravel secrets that would forever alter the course of their lives. The day of the wedding dawned with a soft, overcast light that seemed to promise both renewal and mystery. The venue was an enchanting estate tucked away among sprawling gardens and ancient trees whose leaves whispered secrets of times long past. Every detail of the celebration had been meticulously planned, from the delicate lace adorning the chairs to the gentle hum of a string quartet playing in the background. Yet amid all the beauty and anticipation, Hannah's heart beat with a quiet, uneasy rhythm. Hannah arrived at the venue early, her eyes scanning every corner as if trying to catch a glimpse of something familiar hidden within the splendor of the day. She moved slowly, each step measured, her thoughts wandering to memories of Emma and the quiet hope that had sustained her for so many years. The air was thick with the scent of roses and freshly cut grass, a fragrance that, for a moment, transported her back to sunlit afternoons on the beach. As guests began to arrive, laughter and chatter filled the corridors, but Hannah found herself drifting toward the edge of the gathering, keeping her distance while her heart wrestled with anticipation. When the ceremony commenced, all eyes were drawn to Ethan, who stood at the altar with a calm, confident smile that belied the tumultuous past he had known. His presence radiated warmth and quiet assurance, a beacon of love that made Hannah feel both proud and wistful. Then, the doors opened and Naomi appeared. Draped in a flowing gown of ivory and lace, Naomi moved with a grace that seemed almost otherworldly. Every step she took was deliberate, her eyes soft and welcoming, as though she carried within her the promise of a new beginning. As she reached the front, her gaze briefly met Hannah's, a silent acknowledgement of something unspoken and deeply significant. During the post-ceremony reception, as the clink of champagne glasses mingled with gentle applause and heartfelt congratulations, Hannah found herself drawn toward Naomi. With measured steps, she approached the young bride for a warm introduction. As their hands met in greeting, Hannah's eyes were involuntarily drawn to a small subtle mark on Naomi's wrist, a delicate crescent-shaped birthmark that, in an instant, sent a shockwave through her memory. It was the very same birthmark that had graced Emma's wrist all those years ago, a mark of identity and fate that Hannah had carried in her heart. In that frozen moment, time seemed to stand still. The joyous celebration around them blurred into a distant murmur as Hannah's mind raced to reconcile the impossible truth. Was it merely a coincidence, a random, inexplicable similarity? Or was it a sign, a whisper from the past that could not be ignored? The question, laden with hope and dread, settled heavily in the space between them. Naomi's gentle smile wavered for a heartbeat as if she sensed the gravity in Hannah's eyes, but she said nothing, leaving the question suspended in the air like an unspoken promise. Hannah's heart pounded as she struggled to maintain composure. The world had always seemed to offer little in the way of second chances, and now, with this uncanny resemblance, the ghost of a past long believed lost began to stir anew. As the reception continued with laughter and music, Hannah resolved that she must seek the truth behind the mysterious birthmark, no matter how painful the discovery might be. The seed of hope planted all those years ago was now blossoming into a desperate need for answers, setting her on a course that would soon change everything. Later that evening, as twilight deepened the shadows in the estate's sprawling gardens, Hannah found a quiet corner away from the revelry. The murmur of the party faded into the background, replaced by the steady chirp of crickets and the distant rustling of leaves. In that solitude, the question that had haunted her all day swelled into an irresistible compulsion. She had to know who Naomi truly was. The inexplicable similarity in the birthmark could no longer be brushed aside as mere coincidence. It was a mystery that demanded to be unraveled. Hannah's mind raced back to the bittersweet memories of Emma. The birthmark, subtle yet unmistakable, had been one of the few concrete traces of her daughter's existence. Now, as she stared into the gentle eyes of Naomi, a woman she had barely spoken with, the same mark ignited a spark of recognition and hope that both thrilled and terrified her. Driven by a need for certainty, Hannah summoned every ounce of courage and approached Naomi as the celebration began to wind down. In a hushed, private conversation beneath the boughs of an ancient oak tree, Hannah spoke softly but urgently. "Naomi, there's something I must ask you," she began, her voice quivering with vulnerability. "Your wrist, the birthmark, it's exactly like the one my daughter Emma had." Naomi's eyes widened in surprise, and for a moment, the festive glow around them faded into a tense silence. I've never really thought about it," Naomi stammered, her tone laced with uncertainty. "I was found on a beach when I was very young. I don't remember anything about my past or my family. I was told I was adopted, but I never knew much else." Her words tumbled out in a rush, each syllable carrying the weight of a life spent in search of identity. Hannah listened intently, each revelation peeling back layers of guarded secrets. The realization that Naomi's story mirrored the missing pieces of her own history sent ripples of hope and dread through her soul. "I need to know more," Hannah confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "I need to understand if there's a chance, any chance, that you might be connected to the daughter I lost so long ago." Naomi's gaze softened with empathy, and she reached out to gently clasp Hannah's hand. "I understand how much this means to you," she said quietly. "I have always wondered about my origins. Perhaps we should try to find out the truth together." The vulnerability in Naomi's eyes was a mirror of Hannah's own, a shared longing for clarity in a maze of unanswered questions. The quiet conversation beneath the oak tree stretched long into the night. With every word exchanged, Hannah felt a surge of determination mingled with apprehension. The possibility that Naomi could be Emma was a truth too profound to ignore, a truth that might finally mend the fractured pieces of her heart. As they parted that night with a tentative promise to uncover the mystery, Hannah's mind whirled with both hope and trepidation. The search for truth had only just begun, and the path ahead promised to be as challenging as it was transformative. The next morning, with a resolve born of sleepless nights and relentless hope, Hannah arranged a meeting with the adoptive parents who had raised Naomi. Her heart pounded as she walked through the quiet suburban neighborhood where a modest house, its white paint chipped in places and its garden lovingly tended, stood as the home of Linda and Robert, the couple who had once cradled Naomi as their own. When the door opened, Linda's warm smile greeted Hannah, though an undercurrent of wariness flickered in her eyes. Inside, the living room was decorated with family portraits and cherished mementos, evidence of a life built on love and sacrifice. Yet beneath the surface, Hannah sensed an unspoken secret waiting to be revealed. Taking a deep breath, Hannah broached the subject with gentle directness. "I need to ask you something that's very personal," she began, her voice steady despite the trembling of her heart. "I've been searching for my daughter, Emma, who vanished many years ago. I recently learned about Naomi's background, how she was found alone on a beach when she was just a child. Could you tell me, was Naomi adopted?" Linda exchanged a long, pained look with Robert before nodding slowly. Their silence was heavy with years of guarded memories and unasked questions. "Yes, she was adopted," Linda admitted softly, her voice laden with regret and sorrow. "We found her by the shore when she was about 3 years old. We tried everything to locate her family, but no one ever came forward." Hannah felt the ground shift beneath her. The confirmation was as devastating as it was enlightening. The details, the circumstances, they resonated with a familiar pain that Hannah had carried silently for years. "And, did you ever learn anything more about her origins?" she asked, her tone both hopeful and trembling with fear. Robert's eyes grew distant as he recalled the long, fruitless search. "There were a few details, but nothing conclusive. All we have are fragments, a photograph taken by a kind stranger, a description, and a small birthmark we noted on her wrist. We never truly understood its significance, only that it made her unique." Hannah's pulse quickened as she clutched her hands together. The mention of the birthmark, the tiny crescent that she recognized all too well, stirred a torrent of emotions. "That birthmark, it's the same as Emma's," she murmured, her voice barely audible. Linda's eyes widened in surprise, and for a long silent moment, the room filled with the weight of unspoken possibilities. I never thought about it like that," Linda said hesitantly. "But now that you mention it, I suppose it is very similar." Hannah left that day with a heart that was both heavy and strangely hopeful. The conversation had sown a seed of possibility, one that promised answers to the questions that had haunted her for so long. As she walked away from the small house, the crisp morning air seemed to whisper that the truth was within reach, no matter how painful it might be to uncover. The days following the meeting with Linda and Robert were a blur of anxious waiting and restless nights for Hannah. Every moment was spent wrestling with uncertainty and a desperate need for confirmation. The possibility that Naomi might be her long-lost daughter was both thrilling and terrifying, a revelation that could shatter years of carefully guarded hope or mend the broken fragments of her heart. Determined to find concrete proof, Hannah mustered all the courage she had left and approached Naomi with a proposal that made her pulse race. Over a quiet afternoon in the secluded corner of the estate's garden, where the murmur of distant conversation faded into gentle silence, Hannah looked deeply into Naomi's eyes. "Naomi," she began softly, "I need to ask you something very important. Would you consider taking a DNA test?" Her voice wavered between trembling hope and apprehension. "I know this sounds sudden, but I need to know, can you help me find the truth about who you really are?" Naomi's expression shifted from surprise to quiet contemplation. For a moment, the weight of her unknown past seemed to press down upon her. "I've always wondered about my origins," she admitted in a low, measured tone. "Sometimes, I dream of a family I never knew. If this test could give me any answers, then I'm willing to do it." Her resolve was gentle yet unwavering, a silent acknowledgement that the truth was a burden she, too, longed to share. Ethan, who had been standing at a respectful distance, suddenly stepped forward. His face drained of color as he absorbed the gravity of the request. "Mom," he whispered, his voice laced with a mix of fear and confusion, "are you saying that?" His words trailed off into an agonizing silence, as if the implication was too painful to fully voice. Hannah reached out, placing a steady hand on his shoulder. "I don't know what the results will say, Ethan," she replied, her tone both gentle and firm. "But I need to know if there's a chance that Naomi is connected to the daughter I lost. I need the truth, even if it's hard to bear." The room grew quiet, each heartbeat echoing the possibility of a revelation that could alter everything. Naomi, with a steady breath, nodded slowly. "If this is what you need, I'll do it," she said, her voice resolute yet tinged with sadness. The decision was made with the understanding that the road ahead might be paved with unexpected pain, but also the promise of clarity. As the three of them stood there, Hannah filled with desperate hope, Ethan caught between fear and love, and Naomi quietly accepting her uncertain fate, a fragile bond was forged in that moment of truth-seeking. The DNA test, a small piece of paper that would soon hold the answer to years of unanswered questions, became the beacon in the darkness, a chance to finally unearth the secrets of the past and perhaps begin a journey toward healing. Days later, the atmosphere in the sterile consultation room was thick with anticipation and anxiety. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Hannah, Ethan, and Naomi sat side by side on a row of uncomfortable chairs. Each of them wore an expression that masked a storm of emotions: hope, dread, and a longing for closure that had haunted them for years. In that confined space, time seemed to slow as the doctor returned with a sealed envelope, the DNA test results that could change their lives forever. Hannah's heart pounded in her chest as the doctor began to speak. With a calm yet deliberate tone, the results were read aloud. The DNA analysis confirms that Naomi is the biological daughter of Hannah Parker. For a long suspended moment, the room was enveloped in silence. Then, the quiet erupted into a torrent of emotions. Tears welled in Hannah's eyes as she struggled to process the confirmation of a truth she had dared to dream about for so many years. Naomi's face shifted from incredulity to a dawning realization, her eyes filling with tears as the significance of the words sank in. You're my mother," she managed to whisper, her voice trembling with a mix of shock and overwhelming relief. The revelation was as profound as it was unexpected, a culmination of years of unanswered questions and hidden scars. Hannah, overwhelmed by a mixture of joy and sorrow, reached out and embraced Naomi tightly. The sound of their shared sobs mingled with the distant hum of the room's machinery. It was a reunion years in the making, a bittersweet moment that carried the weight of loss and the promise of healing. Ethan, who had listened in silence, felt a surge of conflicting emotions. His own world, built on the love and care he had received from Hannah, now shifted in a way he had never imagined. In that pivotal moment, the long-buried pain of a missing daughter was met with the tender balm of reunion. The secrets of the past had been unveiled, and with them came a chance for redemption and a new beginning. The DNA test, once a mere formality, had become the bridge that connected a mother's unyielding hope with the possibility of reclaiming a piece of her heart that had been lost to time. As they left the consultation room, hand in hand, the trio stepped forward into an uncertain future, one in which the scars of the past might finally give way to the promise of healing, and where every tear shed could pave the way for a love that endured. The joyous revelation of Naomi's true identity did not come without its own storm of emotion. In the days immediately following the consultation, a heavy silence fell over the household as each person tried to reconcile the truth with the past. Hannah's heart brimmed with both relief and a gnawing fear of what this new reality might mean for the family she had built. The news that Naomi was her lost daughter was a double-edged sword, a miracle born from unimaginable grief, yet one that threatened to expose painful wounds long hidden beneath layers of love and loyalty. One cool evening, as twilight bled into the quiet darkness outside their home, Naomi found herself alone with Ethan in a dimly lit parlor. The air was heavy with unsaid words as the young man's eyes darted nervously, betraying a turmoil he had long tried to hide. Finally, in a trembling whisper, Naomi broke the silence. If Hannah is truly my mother, then what does that make you?" Her voice quivered, laden with fear of an unknown future. The question hung between them like a fragile thread stretched taut with tension. Ethan's face drained of color as he absorbed the implication. His hand shook slightly as he reached out to gently take Naomi's hand, a silent effort to ground them both in the moment. "Naomi," he began haltingly, "I need you to understand something. I was adopted too." The revelation, so casually dropped, was like a bombshell that suddenly redefined the bonds between them. In that moment, the fear of an unintended closeness, a relationship that might be misconstrued, gave way to the comforting truth that there was no biological link between Ethan and Naomi. For Naomi, the news was both a relief and a cause for deep reflection. The thought of having lost not only her unknown past but now a connection that might have inadvertently betrayed the sanctity of a family was almost too much to bear. As Ethan continued, his voice steady despite the tremors of emotion, he explained, "Hannah has been my mother in every way that matters. Our bond is built on love and care, not on blood. I am not her biological son, and that means we have no biological tie that would prevent you and I from having our own future together." The revelation sparked a moment of fragile clarity for Naomi. The devastating realization that she might have been entwined in a complex familial web, one that risked tearing apart everything they cherished, was now replaced by a cautious hope. Though the truth had come at a steep emotional cost, it also cleared the murky shadows of doubt that had haunted her ever since Hannah's shocking discovery. That evening, as the two of them sat in the quiet of the parlor, the tension slowly melted away into tentative understanding. Ethan's embrace was both a comfort and an anchor as Naomi fought back tears of relief. In that bittersweet moment of vulnerability, The specter of a past filled with unanswered questions was finally exorcised by the clarity of truth. Yet, beneath the relief lay a somber awareness that even the deepest wounds required time to heal, and that the family's journey forward would be marked by both joy and the lingering echoes of a painful past. In the days that followed, as the initial shock of the DNA results began to settle, Ethan felt compelled to share more about his own past, a story he had kept hidden for fear of complicating the fragile new family dynamic. One crisp morning, as sunlight streamed gently through the kitchen window, Ethan sat down with Hannah and Naomi at the worn wooden table that had borne witness to so many shared meals and heart-to-heart conversations. With a deep, steadying breath, he began his confession. "I've something I need to tell you both," Ethan said softly, his eyes focused on a spot on the table as if drawing strength from the familiar grain. "I was adopted too." His voice was low, but every word carried the weight of years spent in silence. "Hannah has always been my mother, not because we share blood, but because she has loved, nurtured, and raised me as if I were her own." The room fell into a heavy silence as his words sank in, each syllable breaking down the remaining barriers of uncertainty. Naomi, still processing the revelation that had initially shaken her world, felt a sudden rush of relief. The implication was profound. The bond she feared might exist between her and Ethan, a bond that would have complicated their feelings, was nullified by the truth that they were not biologically connected. Ethan continued, his tone now steadier and filled with heartfelt sincerity. "I was raised by Hannah, and though I have no biological ties to her, she is the only mother I have ever known. I've always been grateful for the love she's given me. And now, as I stand on the brink of a new chapter with you, Naomi, I want you to know that our love is built solely on the choices we've made and the bonds we've formed." The confession, though shocking at first, opened a space for healing. Hannah reached across the table, her eyes shining with a mixture of pride and tenderness. "Ethan, thank you for trusting us with your truth," she murmured. "Our family is built on love, on the courage to face our past and the strength to embrace our future." Naomi nodded, tears glistening in her eyes as she realized that the fears of an impossible closeness were now laid to rest. "I'm so grateful," she whispered, her voice trembling with relief and joy. "We can truly be together, without any doubts about who we are." In that moment, the air in the room seemed to clear, the lingering shadows of uncertainty evaporating in the warmth of honesty. The revelation had not only shattered old fears but had also paved the way for a future defined by mutual trust, understanding, and the promise of unconditional love. As the morning sun bathed them in its gentle glow, the family, redefined by truth and united by choice, stepped forward into a new day, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead with hearts unburdened by the past. In the wake of the revelations that had shaken the foundations of their lives, the bonds within Hannah's household began to settle into something new, an unbreakable tapestry woven from strands of pain, hope, and ultimately love. Over the ensuing weeks, moments of tenderness and understanding replaced the heavy tension that had once filled every room. Hannah, Ethan, and Naomi found solace in one another's arms, their shared experiences acting as a balm for wounds that had long seemed irreparable. Each day brought with it a slow yet determined, healing process. Hannah spent quiet mornings in the garden, watching as the first light of dawn danced on dew-kissed petals, and silently thanking fate for the second chance that had been granted. It was in these moments that she reflected on the twists of destiny, how a lost daughter, an adopted son, and a mysterious bride had come together in ways that defied logic yet confirmed the power of unconditional love. Naomi, who had once wandered through life with a quiet resignation born of unanswered questions, began to embrace the newfound connection with her birth mother. In the gentle cadence of shared laughter and late-night conversations, she discovered fragments of herself that had long been missing. With every story Hannah recounted about Emma, Naomi pieced together the mosaic of her identity, a tapestry of memory, loss, and hope. In these recollections, she found comfort and a sense of belonging that she had yearned for all her life. Ethan, too, emerged as a steadfast pillar of support. His journey from a timid boy at the orphanage to a man defined by love and sacrifice was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. He bridged the gap between past and present with a gentle smile and reassuring words. In the quiet moments when doubts arose, he would wrap his arms around Naomi, whispering promises of a future that was theirs to build, free of the shadows of biological ties, but rich in shared dreams and mutual respect. Family gatherings became a time of celebration rather than sorrow. At dinner tables illuminated by the soft glow of candlelight, stories flowed freely and hearts grew lighter. Hannah's home, once a sanctuary of sorrow, transformed into a haven of healing and hope. With each passing day, the wounds of the past healed a little more, replaced by the tender bonds of acceptance and unconditional love. And though the specter of Emma's disappearance would always linger in the background, a bittersweet reminder of loss, the newfound unity gave way to an enduring optimism. Love, it seemed, was capable of transcending even the deepest scars, knitting together disparate lives into a tapestry of hope that no tragedy could unravel. In the warm glow of familial affection, all fears melted away, replaced by the simple, profound truth that they were together, bound by hearts that beat in unison. In the end, as the seasons turned and the family continued to grow and heal, Hannah, Ethan, and Naomi found that the love they shared was a force that could weather any storm. It was a love that endured, transforming sorrow into strength and pain into a promise of a brighter tomorrow. The wedding, once a day fraught with uncertainties and revelations, gradually blossomed into a celebration of not only love but also new beginnings. The estate where the ceremony had taken place now seemed to echo with the laughter of a future reimagined, a future where every tear shed in sorrow was replaced by a smile born of hope. In the aftermath of all that had transpired, Hannah, Ethan, and Naomi stood together, united by truths that had once seemed too painful to face and by dreams that now burned brighter than ever. In the weeks following the wedding, preparations for a quiet reception in a sunlit hall took on a sense of renewal. The space was adorned with fresh blooms and delicate ribbons, symbols of transformation and rebirth. Family and friends gathered, each sharing stories of resilience, of overcoming the past to embrace a future of limitless possibilities. Hannah looked on with a quiet pride, her heart finally at peace. She had endured a lifetime of longing, and now in this moment, she witnessed the miraculous convergence of hope and love. Naomi, once a girl with unanswered questions about her identity, now walked confidently as a woman who had reclaimed her story. The revelation of her true parentage, though bittersweet, had ignited within her a strength that radiated in every step. In the gentle embrace of Ethan's supportive presence and Hannah's unconditional affection, Naomi felt more whole than she ever had before. Her eyes shone with gratitude and resolve, a promise that she would honor the past by living fully in the present. Ethan, who had navigated the turbulent waters of identity and belonging with quiet determination, continued to be the rock upon which the family leaned. His confession and the subsequent revelations had solidified the bonds between him and Naomi, ensuring that love and trust remained the cornerstones of their future together. With every shared smile and every whispered word of reassurance, he reinforced the belief that their connection was forged not by blood, but by the profound choices of the heart. As the reception drew to a close, the soft strains of a familiar melody filled the air.
Under a starlit sky, Hannah, Ethan, and Naomi gathered on the status terrace for one final moment of reflection. A silent promise to honor the past, embrace the present, and step boldly into a future brimming with hope. With gentle laughter and tears of joy, they recognized that life's most extraordinary moments often arise from the ashes of loss. Together, they vowed to build a future defined not by what had been lost, but by the love they had found along the way. In that tender moment, as the cool night air wrapped around them like a comforting shawl, Hannah felt a deep, abiding peace settle within her. The journey had been long and fraught with heartache, but now, standing at the threshold of a new beginning, she knew that every sacrifice, every tear, had led to this singular transformative truth: love endures, and in its embrace, even the most broken hearts can be made whole. In the aftermath of revelations and heart-wrenching discoveries, the lives of Hannah, Ethan, and Naomi had been forever transformed. Their journey, marked by loss, hope, and the unyielding power of love, taught them that family is defined not solely by blood but by the bonds we choose to nurture. Hannah's relentless search and unbroken hope had brought her face to face with a daughter she once believed was lost forever, and in doing so, had woven together a tapestry of resilience and redemption. Every tear shed, every painful memory, became a stepping stone toward healing, a testament to the truth that even the deepest wounds can be mended with compassion and understanding. Ethan and Naomi, too, discovered that the ties that bind them were stronger than any uncertainty of the past. Their love, built on honesty and mutual respect, blossomed into a beacon of hope that promised a future filled with promise and unity. As the first light of a new day bathed them in its gentle glow, they stepped forward together, carrying with them the lessons of their shared journey. The scars of yesterday had given way to the hope of tomorrow, proving that sometimes, the most profound endings pave the way for the most beautiful beginnings. In the quiet dawn, the whispers of the past merged with the promise of a fresh start, reminding them, and all who dare to hope, that love endures, heals, and ultimately transforms every heart it touches. Thank you so much for watching the entire video. I hope you enjoyed the story and found it as meaningful as I did. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a thumbs up,
subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below.
Your feedback means the world.
Stay tuned for more amazing content, and I can't wait to see you in the next one.